Based on witness reports, an unidentified individual opened fire inside the Wilmington Courthouse in Delaware on February 11, 2013, at approximately 8 a.m., resulting in the deaths of 2 women before the shooter took his own life. This act of violence was premeditated and not a spontaneous incident. Law enforcement personnel, including police officers and FBI agents, responded to the scene. While operatives conducted a thorough search of the courthouse, the investigation remained in its early stages. Authorities located the gunman's vehicle, a white SUV, parked on the opposite side of the street. Within the car, police discovered a red notebook containing a list of intended victims. The primary target was Christine Belfort, followed by her lawyer Timothy Hitchings, one of the women who was killed. The attorney survived the incident, having been delayed by a few minutes and not yet meeting with his client. Video footage from security cameras reveals 2 individuals exiting the vehicle. One of them nonchalantly traversed the street and entered the courthouse, followed shortly by the second person, after which the aforementioned events unfolded. At 12:10 p.m., the police issued a press release indicating that the assailant was linked to one of the victims, his former spouse, Christine Belfort. However, the truth proved to be far more disturbing. Detective Jeffrey Schreiner, upon hearing the radio report of the courthouse shooting, swiftly responded to the scene. Inside, he discovered 2 women lying adjacent to each other on the floor, and a man lying separately just beyond the revolving door. As the police officer entered the lobby and examined the victims more closely, he recognized one of them. Detective Schreiner was the sole individual at the scene with prior knowledge of the Christine Belfort and David Matusiewicz case. He instinctively presumed he knew the shooter's identity, but the detective's assumption proved incorrect. The situation was far more complex than it appeared. 6 years prior to the shooting, on September 9, 2007, around 9 p.m., Detective Jeffrey Schreiner from the Missing Persons Unit received a distressed call from a woman. She adamantly claimed that her 3 daughters had been abducted, identifying herself as Christine Belfort. According to her account, the perpetrator was her ex-husband, David Matusiewicz. Christine had permitted her husband to take their children on a 2-week vacation to Disneyland in Orlando, Florida. On August 26, 2007, the woman bade farewell to her 3 young blonde daughters with a kiss. Despite no apparent cause for concern, she spent the following 2 weeks feeling uneasy. The woman mentioned that whenever her daughters were with their father, contacting them was consistently challenging. She and her ex-husband had agreed that the children would return home by September, but they never did. The ex-husband did not respond to phone calls. Initially, Schreiner did not consider the incident a kidnapping, viewing it as another case of parents battling for custody. Such situations were common. A father or mother would take the children for the weekend and be reluctant to return them promptly, desiring to spend more time with them. The detective simply intended to reach out to David and clarify the situation from his perspective, but he was unable to contact Matusiewicz. The officer was aware that family abductions typically involved children under the age of 6, who were too young to comprehend that a crime was occurring. However, those who kidnapped their own children were usually located within a matter of hours or days. Christine Belfort's case proved to be different. The policeman's suspicions grew when Christine visited the station and presented him with custody documents. The documents revealed that David had made various allegations against his ex-wife, asserting that Christine was an unfit mother for his daughters and that he should be granted full custody. Matusiewicz's accusations began with suspicions that the woman had bipolar disorder and attempts to have her committed to a psychiatric hospital. As the investigation commenced, Schreiner first examined the credit card records, which indicated that David's last transaction occurred on August 26th, the day the family departed for Florida. A few weeks before the disappearance, Matusiewicz's mother, Lenore, had acquired a Winnebago motorhome. The elderly woman had also vanished. The detective urgently submitted a report to initiate the search, but at that point, no one was aware of David's intentions for his ex-wife. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. Christine met David Matusiewicz following the dissolution of her first marriage. Initially, he appeared to be a very agreeable individual to her. The man was a prosperous optometrist who owned his own practice. They encountered each other when Christine was employed by him as an administrator. In 2001, Christine and David wed and relocated to a pleasant residence in Middletown, Delaware. The woman already had a daughter, Katie, from her previous marriage, and they subsequently had 3 more daughters, 3 little blondes, Laura, Lee, and Karen. The marriage began to deteriorate as soon as David permitted his parents, Thomas and Lenore, to reside with them. Thomas, a former police officer from New Jersey, was described as a highly argumentative individual. Lenore was not far behind her husband in terms of irritability. With no other occupation, David's mother started to educate her daughter-in-law and instruct her on how to manage the household. The woman was annoyed by absolutely everything: how her granddaughters were educated, how her son was cared for, what was prepared for dinner, or how family finances were managed. Lenore, with her advice, was prepared to intervene in any aspect of the young family's life. It reached a point where Christine began to feel uncomfortable in her own home. After 5 years of marriage, in January 2006, she filed for divorce. The woman hoped that they would be able to maintain a cordial relationship with her ex-husband and the girl's father, sharing custody of them. However, David had no intention of allowing this. More than 2,000 miles to the south, in Hidalgo County, Texas, David Matusiewicz's car was speeding toward the Mexican border. Christine's 3 daughters, Laura, Lee, and Karen, were playing in the back of the car. Their father, David, and their grandmother, Lenore, were seated in the front seats of the van. Soon, U.S. jurisdiction ended, and the travelers reached the customs post. An agent took their passports and asked how many people were inside the motorhome. David answered without showing the slightest sign of concern. Lenore also smiled kindly at the officer, not arousing any suspicion. The agent could clearly hear the girls talking and laughing somewhere inside. He compared the photographs in the passports with the faces of the driver and passenger, then returned the documents to David and opened the gate. The Matusiewicz mother and son, along with his 3 daughters, successfully crossed the international border. At that time, the authorities were unaware that the man had started planning his crime in the previous year. In December 2006, he arranged to obtain fake IDs for himself, his mother, and all 3 girls. David's motorhome crossed the Mexican border on August 28th and left no trace behind. Now, with a 2-week head start, they could be anywhere. Local authorities and federal agencies initially searched for the girls in New Jersey, where David grew up. Then they followed dozens of leads in Virginia, and only one tip made them suspect that the girls could be outside the country. Investigators searched David's house and found bank statements from New Zealand and Canada. Detective Schreiner also discovered that David had sold his business in Delaware for $650,000. Even worse, he had taken out a $249,000 loan in Christine's name by forging her signature. While Christine was trying to determine where her ex-husband could have gone with their 3 children, she tried to remain strong, not revealing that she had nearly stopped sleeping at night. She spent all her free hours fruitlessly at the computer, hoping to find even the slightest thread leading to her girls. November 2007 marked 2 months since Christine's daughters had vanished. Thomas Matusiewicz and his daughter Amy Gonzalez claimed to have no knowledge of David and Lenore's whereabouts. However, curiously, both Thomas and Amy abruptly relocated to Texas, within 20 miles of the Mexican border. This behavior did not go unnoticed, and Detective Schreiner suggested that the entire Matusiewicz family was implicated in the abduction. At that point, the search for the missing had reached an international scale, with Interpol also involved. News agencies reported on the kidnapping of 3 girls by a Delaware optometrist. Soon, the police discovered that David was hiding in Cerro Azul, just an hour's drive from Panama City. They mobilized a team, but David vanished before operatives could reach the house where he was hiding. Shortly thereafter, the FBI received information about David's passport, which he had used to travel to Costa Rica. And then there was complete silence. Over the next 16 months, the case stalled, and the investigation essentially ceased. By March 2009, Christine had nearly lost hope. She had not heard from the girls for 18 months. Karen, the youngest, was only 2 years old when her mother last saw her. She was just a baby, and now she would soon turn 4. Katie, Christine's eldest daughter from a previous relationship, shared in an interview what her mother had to endure. Every time she received the slightest hint, Christine would board a plane and fly to where David and her girls were supposedly located. But she consistently returned with the same words: "They're not there." With each trip, her confidence rapidly diminished. Christine's condition was deteriorating, but she could not accept the idea that she had lost her little blonde angels and would never see them again, never witness them growing up, falling in love, or getting married. The woman desperately pushed such thoughts away, but time relentlessly brought them back. Even Detective Schreiner began to question the likelihood of a successful outcome to the case. But then, the FBI got a lead. They were monitoring the cell phone of Amy Gonzalez, David's sister, and intercepted a call to South America, to a small town called Catalina, Nicaragua. The police immediately issued a bulletin with photos of the missing persons and the Winnebago van with Delaware plates. This is not a very common vehicle in that country, so there was a high probability that it would be noticed. On March 13, 2009, a Nicaraguan police officer pulled over a car for a routine document check. The driver of the car was revealed to be David Matusiewicz, accompanied by his eldest daughter, Laura. The man was driving around town selling his daughter's belongings. After spending approximately $1 million planning the abduction, he had less than $100 in cash on him. When David handed his driver's license to the officer disregarded it and instead instructed the driver to exit the vehicle. David was promptly arrested, and Laura was taken to the police station. Lenore, David's mother, and the 2 younger girls were in a filthy trailer filled with items from their Delaware home, a few miles outside of town. That night, Christine was the first to fly to Nicaragua. It was an emotional reunion between the mother and children who had not seen each other for more than a year and a half. At first glance, the girls appeared healthy, although they did not look their best. The eldest, Laura, who had already turned 7, recounted to her mother how she once slept on a beach in Costa Rica. Her daughter, Lee, who had psychological problems, was not receiving any treatment. Christine was overjoyed, but simultaneously, she was somewhat shocked by what she heard. The woman was astonished to learn what David had been telling the girls about her. Laura, the eldest daughter, said that they believed their mother was dead. Their father had told the little ones that Christine had taken her own life. The girls believed that their mother truly did not love them, since she decided to go to heaven without even saying goodbye. This was genuinely cruel and heartless towards his own children. To avoid trial, David Matusiewicz pleaded guilty to kidnapping his own children and bank fraud. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, followed by a 5-year probationary period. Lenore Matusiewicz also pleaded guilty to endangering the lives of the children. She received 18 months behind bars. According to her lawyer, the elderly woman deeply regretted her choice and stated that it was wrong to separate the children from their mother, adding that keeping the girls away from their grandmother was also a harsh punishment. Christine knew she needed to hire a lawyer to strip David of any custody rights before he was released. Christine's attorney, Timothy Hitchings, filed a petition to terminate parental rights for Laura, Karen, and Lee, as well as a restraining order against all members of the Matusiewicz family. This was the last straw for Christine's ex-husband. Although David and his mother Lenore were in custody, and the children were safe with their mother, the nightmare that had lasted for the past year and a half was just a preparation for what the Matusiewiczes had in store for Christine. They were not going to forgive the woman for such presumption. On December 22nd, David wrote a letter from prison to his sister, warning that he was done playing Mr. Nice Guy. The man asked her to start filing anonymous complaints with the Family Affairs Department and create a website dedicated to Christine Belford. At that moment, no one yet realized what kind of monster they were actually dealing with. In March 2009, 4 years before the courthouse shooting, the news about the return of Christine's 3 daughters appeared on the front page of the News Journal, which published a photo of Christine with Laura and Karen. When the girls returned home, it was very noticeable how much weight they had lost. Their teeth required urgent treatment, and their eyes were red due to severe conjunctivitis. The nomadic lifestyle that their father and grandmother had arranged for them was clearly not suitable for their young bodies. For a while, the girls were simply not themselves, but soon their lives returned to normal. Now that David and Lenore were behind bars, Christine could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At that time, a woman named Cindy Bender added Christine as a friend on social media. She told her how she had followed the story of the girls' abduction with excitement and was overjoyed that it had ended well. Cindy wanted to know that Laura, Karen, and Lee were now okay, and so began their correspondence friendship. The woman told Christine a story about how she had dated David Matusiewicz in the past and understood better than anyone else what Christine had to go through. This made Christine believe in the pure intentions of her interlocutor. The need to share her experiences with someone played a cruel joke on the girl's mother. The woman told Cindy information about the girls' lives, their grades in school, and their successes in sports. She sent her countless personal photos of the whole family and told her about funny incidents in their daily lives. Christine forgot that it's best to keep personal matters to oneself and not trust the first person you meet. In fact, Cindy Bender had long been in love with David, and it was at his request that she befriended Christine online. Christine had a private profile, but by adding her as a friend, Cindy could see everything she posted and know from correspondence, almost every detail of what was happening behind closed doors with Christine and the girls. Naturally, she passed all the information she received to her beloved's relatives. In December 2009, when David and his mother Lenore were already behind bars, a mysterious web page appeared on the internet titled "A Grandmother's Impossible Choice and a Father's Willingness to Risk Everything to Save His Little Girls." The essence of this article was that in 29 points, fictitious events from the lives of Christine and the girls were described, where the woman was accused of things such as intimate harassment of her eldest daughter, physical punishment, and assault. It was said that the mother threatened to sell her children for $50,000 to a recently released prisoner, just so as not to share custody with David. Christine was accused of throwing food on the carpet so that her daughter and dog would fight for it. Allegedly, Christine kept a diary that Lenore accidentally discovered when she was cleaning the house. The elderly woman read it, learned about her own daughter-in-law's devious plans, and decided to save her granddaughters from their monster mother. And the girl's father sacrificed everything to take his children away from this woman. But who could create a web page if Lenore herself was in prison and did not have the opportunity to go online? It turned out to be very simple. David's sister, Amy Gonzalez, worked on creating the site. In a letter sent from prison by her brother, there were clear instructions regarding actions. David came up with various plots to spread this story. Amy printed out pages of the website and sent them to everyone who was in any way connected with Christine, her friends, neighbors, colleagues, and parents of students. At that time, Christine was teaching at a church Sunday school. All this was done anonymously, but the goal was to completely destroy the poor woman's reputation, put her in the most unfavorable light, and make it clear that the Matusiewiczes were still in control of the situation. Close friends were shocked when they opened the envelopes and read the contents of the anonymous messages. They guessed whose handiwork it was, but they could not understand why the Matusiewicz would spread false, compromising information about Christine after what they had done themselves. Christine had to say goodbye to her job. She left her position as an elementary school teacher because she realized that she could not tell first graders about a righteous life when they were spreading dirty rumors about her. No matter how much Christine tried to protect her daughters from the false accusations against her, she realized that sooner or later it could affect them as well. The eldest girl, 16-year-old Katie, tried in every way to support her mother and protect her younger sisters from the wave of hate on the internet. But even she felt that Christine's strength was running out and the campaign against her was beginning to bear its bitter fruits. It already seemed to the woman that it would never stop, that David and his family would never stop and would not let them live in peace. If previously religion had helped her cope with difficulties, now she was practically deprived of even that. Christine fell into an even deeper depression. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video. It's really important. Christine's condition was worsened by the fact that on September 16, 2010, Lenore Matusiewicz was released from prison. Even at a distance, Christine feared her mother-in-law and what she might dare to do for the sake of revenge for her son. An elderly woman was unlikely to be deterred by a restraining court order, given what she had dared to do in an attempt to abduct her own granddaughters. In March 2011, a video titled "Don't Hurt Me, Mommy" appeared on YouTube, where Christine Belford is trying to jokingly drag her frolicking girls home. The author of the video wanted network users to believe that the mother was mistreating her little ones. The number of indignations in the comments was off the scale, and this clearly indicated that someone truly saw Christine as a woman who bullied her own children, which was precisely what the Matusiewiczes wanted. They aimed to break Christine so that she would give up the girls herself, not being able to withstand the cyber attack, and apparently they were close to achieving their goal. Christine always felt like she was being followed. She literally turned into a paranoid. By that time, Christine had a man named Gerald Purcell. He immediately guessed who was leaking information about Christine to her ex-husband and tried to persuade the woman to stop corresponding with Cindy Bender. But for some reason, Christine believed that her online friend would not betray her and continued to share intimate details. When Thomas and Lenore Matusiewicz unexpectedly descended on their house in December 2011, having traveled more than 2,000 miles from another state, it was Gerald Purcell who was able to confront the former relatives. Having arrived unexpectedly, the grandmother and grandfather scared the children to such an extent by starting to break into all the windows and doors that they hid in the closet in the bedroom. They did not come out until Gerald appeared. Although everything seemed to end well, Christine no longer wanted to stay in this place. Despite the fact that video cameras were installed outside the building, 2 German shepherds lived with them in the house, and there was a bat next to the bed in the bedroom and knives on the bedside table. Christine did not feel safe. She was consumed by the idea of moving away so that she would never meet either David or his parents again. Meanwhile, members of the Matusiewicz family, awaiting David's release from prison, were already preparing another attack. They had a plan of Christine's house, photographs of every entrance, every window, and every installed camera. They were only waiting for the release of the main character and the ideological mastermind, David. The Matusiewicz family was obsessed with the idea of getting the children by any means. Christine did not know this, but she sensed the threat emanating from them. She understood that they would not back down from her so easily and would not allow the girls to stay with her. After the kidnapping, the woman was preparing for the worst. She and her eldest daughter, Katie, even developed a sequence of actions in case of an emergency. Christine understood that David would do everything to make her suffer, even if his own children suffered in the process. Now he had nothing to lose. In the last days before the end of his prison sentence, the mother literally called her daughters every half hour to know where they were. After being released from federal prison in April 2012, David went to EdCouch to his family. Christine was able to file for child support for her 3 children after her ex-husband served his sentence. He refused to pay, so the trial was scheduled for February 2013. On the morning of February 11th, Christine got the girls ready for classes, trying to keep a happy face. If the younger ones did not yet notice the hidden emotions, Katie clearly saw how much effort it cost her mother. Christine arranged to go to the hearing with her friend Laura Mulford. Gerald, her boyfriend, offered to take time off work and go with them, but Christine refused. The women arrived at the New Castle County Courthouse in Wilmington around 8 a.m. They entered the lobby through the revolving doors. There were few visitors inside, only a few people, including security guards. Suddenly, shots rang out, followed by the sound of breaking glass and the screams of eyewitnesses. The target of the attack was Christine Belford. She was shot dead on the spot. Her friend Laura Mulford tried to run out into the street, but she was also hit by a bullet. Surveillance camera footage shows a man coming out from behind a column, raising his hand and firing a .45 caliber pistol. Christine entered the courthouse first, followed by her friend Laura. Christine was shot several times in the chest. The guards, who had come to their senses, tried to confront the shooter, but both were wounded. Then the man, not reaching the exit, raised his gun and shot himself in the head. He died on the spot. Both women, Christine Belford and Laura Mulford, were urgently taken to the hospital, but it was too late. Both were pronounced dead. This was the culmination of years of threats, harassment, and cyberstalking directed at Christine by her ex-husband David, along with other members of his family. David himself was found in the Newcastle courthouse and taken into custody. The shooter turned out to be not him, but his father Thomas Matusiewicz, who, after dealing with the women, turned the gun on himself. Detective Schreiner, who was called to the scene as soon as he saw Christine on the floor, first thought that her ex-husband had shot her. Only when he saw the elderly man next to the revolving door did he realize that he was mistaken. Police officers were urgently sent to schools to pick up the children before Lenore or Amy could get to them. The safety of the children became the top priority in this case, because the shooting of Christine in the courthouse was not the end of the Matusiewicz's plan. All the girls were found in class and immediately taken to a safe place. Meanwhile, detectives questioned David and found out the address where Lenore and Amy were waiting for the men. The women claimed that they were not aware of what had happened. They denied any involvement in the shooting. Lenore assured the police that her husband acted independently. When Christine's boyfriend Gerald was told of her death, the man was devastated by the tragic news. Just last night, they were dreaming of how they would sort things out and get away from all these problems, and today, the life of his beloved had suddenly ended. He could not protect her, did not insist on personally accompanying her to court, and now the man felt that a part of his soul had died with Christine. The eldest daughter, Katie, learned about the shooting in the courthouse from social media messages. The girl already guessed that her mother could have been hurt, hoping until the last that it was some kind of mistake. Unfortunately, all her worst fears were justified. But for the Matusiewicz family, Christine's death served as a signal for action. A few days after the incident, Amy Gonzalez filed a petition for custody of the girls, and Christine's mother-in-law gave an interview where she repeated the fictional story from the website. Lenore thought that now her hands were untied and no one would be able to justify Christine. The woman did not take into account that her granddaughters were growing up and were able to tell the truth themselves. A search was conducted at the Matusiewicz house in Edcouch, Texas. Inside, police found weapons, ammunition, and a handwritten note by Thomas. It was clear that the man knew he would never return home. The case was investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Delaware State Police. Detectives concluded that the only way to ensure the future safety of Christine's 3 children was to hold the entire Matusiewicz family accountable. Amy Gonzalez and Lenore were arrested. David was already behind bars by then. On June 11, 2015, the trial began in the first case in history of cyberstalking resulting in death. Hundreds of pieces of evidence were presented against the Matusiewicz family. Weapons with ammunition, photographs of Christine's house with surveillance cameras circled, and hundreds of emails discussing ways to harass Christine. Lenore tried to defend the family and quote a printout of the fake story about her daughter-in-law, but Christine's daughter Laura, who was 13 years old at the time, was called as a witness. She was able to sensibly assess what had happened to her mother. Laura was able to restore Christine's honor and reputation by saying that her mother had never behaved cruelly towards her or her sisters. The schoolgirl insisted that she had never been subjected to any violence by her mother. Everything her grandmother said was a blatant lie. David Matusiewicz, his mother Lenore, and his sister Amy Gonzalez were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They will never get out of prison again. After Christine's tragic death, her 3 girls were placed in a foster family. The eldest, Katie, who already has a child of her own, hopes to one day be reunited with her sisters. Christine Belford left behind a legacy that will never be destroyed. 4 beautiful daughters who cherish the memory of their untimely departed mother. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.